Dinner?
Three houses.
You didn't get yours, did you?
I didn't get mine.
Oh, that works.
Maybe. Yes, I don't have to. Birthday party for David. All right. You guys run late last night? Yes. You guys run late last night? Get rid of that.
No, just like it's back to school, full week.
Oh, yeah.
Changing of the sleep schedule.
Yeah,
up
that
at-
fun.
Up at 5:30 now. So,
Nice.
I mean, there's still just as much stuff to do.
I'm so shocked maybe because you've been getting up. They start school this week. He's getting up. You get up so early. I go down. That last hour.
I get up and everybody leaves and I've got an hour. It's very. Just trying to take it easy and still I'm up. I can't go back to sleep. Make lunches yet.
Sad to be here in the air conditioning. Not sad to be here in the air conditioning.
Sure, it's closer.
Is yours working at all?
It's limping along. It's
I think every day.
at its gate and it's gonna be
What are you doing?
It's tough. It's tough.
exactly.
It's all sad. It's like normal time. Your contract, you think everybody's awake.
Tomorrow morning, they're
I
coming.
know, I call people like
Six.
Oh, yeah.
6:30, 7 o'clock all the time.
We only
Like,
have,
what
like
are you-
you've been awake for 3
They're
hours.
like, what are you
just think
doing? And I
everybody
was like,
else
I was
is
up at 4 o'clock this morning. Where were you at?
awake.
What time did you go to bed? 2? Like you're running on 4 hours of sleep? Yeah, and a bunch of Red Bull. We're good. What do you want? I went to New Albany, had an espresso this morning. Jesse.
All right. Let's call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. Go ahead with the roll call.
Chairman Ryan Green.
Here.
Ron Dane.
Here.
Betsy Koppel.
Here.
John Merriman.
Here.
Henley.
Here.
Go with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to public comment on matters not on tonight's agenda. If we have public comment, go ahead. You come up to the podium and state your name and address for us.
My name's David Cool. I live at 108 Maple Leaf Drive. And I'm one of the guys that's been involved with the tussle between the Coghlan Leafy Dell Apartments and the villas at Leafy Dell, which are the condominiums. We've prepared a letter that we're going to send by email to all of you and to the village council and to folks in administration. And it basically relates to communication. We have a feeling that maybe you're not getting all the information you need. So here's what we've done. We've received copies of the new site plans for the Coghlan Leafy Dell Apartments on August the 18th. They were dated June 29th, and I'm sure that delivered a little tussle here and there. We trust there have been no changes in the 6 weeks. Or perhaps there's a new list of 20 questions. There's one list of 20 questions, which were softballs. So if there's any new questions that you folks are going to send out, we'd be happy to help you with that. And we are preparing this letter, and it's not quite done yet, or else I'd hand it to you. We'd wait till tomorrow, but then we'll send it by email. And if you feel it's necessary, we'll be happy to send it certified, signature required. But I don't think that'll be necessary. I've noticed that there are no material changes in the plans that were received by us, thanks to Jim Blair. The issues are still the same. So let me highlight them quickly and then I'll let you go. Our private property lines are being ignored. It seems that there's some sort of misunderstanding about exactly where our lines are. We have buildings that are planned right, boom, very close to our property lines, and we don't like that. Our private streets are being incorporated into access and ingress. Our utilities are being interfered with. There are plans to move fire plugs and stuff like that, and that's the worst I can imagine. We've not seen any plans for fencing and screening, and if there are any, maybe you could make them available to me. There's also an issue about noise abatement. You get those industrial strength air conditioners cranked up, all of a sudden, there's a whole lot of noise that's not normal for residential. No construction traffic is permitted on our property, and you can bet somebody's going to try it. We've already blocked them off with concrete barriers. And if we find somebody on our property that doesn't belong, we're going to prosecute them. I've already talked to the police department. They say that they'll do everything they can do, and you know how that works. The thing is, the buildings do not fit on that site plan. There's just no way you can squeeze them in there, even with a shoehorn. They don't fit. We want proper setbacks. Our street is not just a driveway, it's a street that's private, and we expect setbacks from that direction, not from the front and Stonehenge, or the back is what we can't see, the front's always what you can see. So we're going to take a pretty hard look at that. The idea that we've gone this far and none of our issues have been taken seriously is beginning to tick off a whole lot of us. We have members of our association who are very skilled in construction, in law, and other aspects of what we're into here. So we don't appreciate being ignored. We think there's certainly a place where we can talk and negotiate and everything else. If we're not going to negotiate, then that's too bad. I'm reminded when I started looking at where the buildings were and where they were over lines that they shouldn't have crossed, and where they're, I mean, you look at it, it's ugly. I'm reminded of the O.J. Simpson trial. Remember that glove, and they tried to get that thing all shrunk up and get it on his hand. They said, if it doesn't fit, you must have quit. Well, I say, if it doesn't fit, you ought to quit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
I'm Mary Queen Cool, and I live at 120 Maple Leaf. And first of all, I want to say some of our comments are not directed at the commission. We know you guys were kind of unaware of some of this. So we are not directing these comments at you. So just so you know that. I also looked at the plans that were submitted, these tentative plans. Have the same concerns David just mentioned. But I have a few others and a few questions. One is whether zoning has authorized a curb cut on Leafy Hill Drive for this project.
We as a board have not authorized anything or reviewed any of this. This is happening internally so far.
They took that power out of our hands. It's now done by Jim Leonard.
Well, it may have never been in our hands. This sort of thing, this would be akin to if Taco Bell tried to come in next to Burger King down there. It's already zoned our staff applies the zoning as written to that project, correct, Jim?
Correct.
So it'd be similar to that, but that's kind of how it's progressed. But up to this point, officially, I understand that the argument is official versus unofficial and what's been applied and what's come in. I understand that's where we're stuck here. And some of us have been caught unaware. Now, whether that's right or wrong is a different argument. I can see different sides. If there's nothing official, there was nothing that we were officially doing. I get that. But things were submitted on a certain level. Questions were answered and submitted on a certain level. And that's being hashed out internally. So that's all gonna get taken a look at.
And can we take a second, since it's kind of the issue's been kind of raised, that to go over the process of where we fit into this whole approval and plan submitting thing, because we haven't seen a single thing on this property yet. Bailey, can you give us a overview of when if ever we will see this, or how our commission fits into the process that Jim talked about? Is this going to be a forum to negotiate some of the things, or never? This will never be a forum. Can you give everybody an overview?
Planning and zoning for their approval.
This will never be before our commission for any decision making or.
And just to answer your question, curb cuts do not get approved by planning and zoning. They get approved by the village manager. Any curb cut.
Well, I swear I read something that said the zoning inspector was involved in that also, so.
Who's actually, that's Jim, but he's his duties are not overseen by this commission those again are his duties are overseen by the village manager, Jim Leonard also.
Okay, I go back to your comments, Ryan, because there's no misunderstanding. We have repeatedly asked questions of this
Sure.
commission,
As of late.
repeatedly. And we never asked for official documents. We asked for any documents. We were all lied to. That's not a misunderstanding. So I don't appreciate that.
No, I get it. We asked as well, and this is an ongoing investigation. I can tell you that.
Okay,
Um,
I didn't want that minimized
stemming
because
from
that
last
was
week,
not
yes.
a misunderstanding.
There are things being looked at and that are gonna be talked about in the future here, but
Okay.
as it goes for us, unfortunately, we don't get a say in this. We would love a say in this, but we don't, as things are currently written. This doesn't go in front of council either.
So there'll never be a public forum to discuss this as
It'll be a public forum to discuss, but whether the people you're talking to get a say in it is.
well, if Jim Leonard and the staff are making the decisions, they don't have public meetings, so there'll never be a forum to discuss these issues.
So you're saying Jim and Bailey are the two, and zoning are the three people we need to be
Yes,
addressing all of our issues to and filing whatever we want to file. We'll be
Yeah.
against the three of them.
basically, yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we would love to have a say and pick it apart ourselves too, but
I
we
believe they're appointed.
don't have
by
jurisdiction either.
village
Right,
And you guys, so
right.
that's where they got their jobs, so. It can't be like hands off completely.
We'd love to be
happy
hands-on.
hear Anything you guys have to say about it, for sure. It'll be on the record. It'll be in there. But as far as us voting on it, we can't.
Oh, I'm not asking you to vote on something.
Right,
So,
and as it goes now. Now, whether there will be a discussion later on, things may change, that'll remain to be seen.
And I just wanted to make that clear because David's been in here before. So you guys have been in here before to talk about fencing and property lines and noise abatement. And I don't want you guys to feel like we're ignoring your concerns. Because honestly, I would love to help you and I would love to help negotiate the plans too. But the fact of the matter is the plans are never going to come before me and they're never going to come before this board. So you can come, I wish they would come before this board, and maybe we need to look at the code to see what procedures that we can implement to put another step in the process. As is right now, there is no step in the process that they're going to come before us. So, unfortunately I'd love to help you with the fence, with the noise abatement and the fence stuff, but it's never unless they have to come before us to get an approval, then we have no cards, no leverage, nothing that we can do.
well, I'm telling you, all of us are very concerned because the questions raised aren't even the big issues. So why these questions would be raised and they'd miss all the big things? You got me.
And the village staff is accountable ultimately to council. So council may be the best public forum for you guys to voice your concerns.
We go there too, believe me. Yeah. That's the last time we met Bailey. Building structures, I believe our zoning ordinances still call for 30-foot height, even though you're working towards 32. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're at what, 30, our new stuff was 32 to go with the fire code.
I can't speak of the specific height, but there is a height
Currently,
maximum
yeah, it's
by
around.
zoning district unless otherwise approved by at least the fire chief where we've had.
But the new stuff's not in effect yet, correct?
No,
Okay.
we haven't gone through all that
Okay.
yet. So.
Okay.
Soon.
Soon.
So we are on what? We're on Article 33 right now. So I mean, we're a little over halfway.
But the current code has something in there, right?
Current code has something. I know we were around 30. It had to do with how tall the fire ladders were.
The current code says 30.
Yeah.
Your draft of the new says 32.
Yep.
Is what you're aiming for, but it's not in place, so.
That 30 was put in there as a benchmark to the ladder height of the fire equipment at that time. I don't think there have been any changes because the caveat that was put in was unless otherwise approved by the fire chief, which gives that variance depending on the ability of the equipment.
So the fire department might have an issue with the 36.5-foot tall building,
It's
or
outside
8 of
our
them.
code.
Yeah, if it's out, if they can't reach it, yes, yeah,
There's 8 of them that high, so
we would agree.
that wasn't one of the questions.
So what would the process be if their building height is above code?
They'd have to apply for a variance.
So that variance would have to come before us. Then we would have jurisdiction. So they can't go,
40 feet for.
so they can't move forward with that plan unless they come to us for a variance. So that,
So we know that one is,
The curb cut, I had heard somewhere unofficially that it may not happen, but I don't know if that's gonna happen. I would not want to see a curb cut go onto the main road there.
because that road's a
Traffic is bad
disaster.
enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
We agree. The road is a disaster already. You have a ordinance that says paved portions of a development or a property, a lot, whatever, are limited to 20%. I didn't see anything in the new stuff that says you're trying to change that. I'd assume you wouldn't.
We addressed what, 2 weeks ago about pavement and parking. We talked about as much area as you could have. We advocated for more islands in there, more tree cover, things like that to kind of obscure the view of them. And to add, shaded space above. We did talk about that. As far as percentages, I'd have to look that up.
Because it's been 20.
Yep.
And
I know we're trying to break
Hoglin's
it up.
response is that they're at 22, excluding all of the roads, sidewalks, etc.
Right.
And they were kind enough to give us that percentage, so it puts them at 40% paved. Twice the village standard.
Again, that would be a variance. It all depends on definitions of that. What is a paved surface and whether or not the roads and sidewalks count as a part of that, but. as
They're
it relates-
paved surfaces, so, yeah.
Right, as it relates to our current code. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that we've been erring a lot on green space and trying to have property unimproved as much as possible, preserve that green space.
Right.
But I cannot recall how we're trending relative to say that district specifically to paved surface percentages, but I wouldn't think we would increase it in any way.
I wouldn't think
we did
40% paved versus 20 would be huge on water runoff. I think that'd be a major impact.
Right.
Another question. On a piece of ground like Coglin is looking at, if I try to fit my buildings in there, can I put a building right on the street with no space between the street and that building?
As far as a private street, or are you
Mhm.
talking about as far as a
Private street, can I put it?
But if it's a public street, no, there's a setback.
It'll be a private street, I assume. But can they put it with no setback whatsoever? so that the cars will be driving right by the windows and they can't come out their doors.
I would assume not unless it's their private street.
But we don't have anything covering that.
And yours are back from your private streets. I know that the other condo is back. Well, if it's their private,
I think we'd have to ask on that. But
Yeah.
The private street piece is the consideration to your point.
Yeah, because otherwise the building's here and the cars are coming against the building. No little kid can go running out, so.
Personally, I would hazard any kind of guess. I would hazard against personally any kind of guess because I don't know, because the private street piece, I think relative to our current standing, it's a little bit of a gray space. So I wouldn't know offhand. I would have to ask that, but I think it's a valid point.
yeah, I mean, yours,
You got
your condos,
interpretation?
there's a setback. Even the apartments that they currently have, they at least have 5 feet. Some green space. So I would imagine there has to be something.
Because I know they've got 10 feet from the front of the building to the parking lot.
Yeah.
But they've got doors on the back also. So I would think they'd have that, but they didn't say that and they don't show that.
Right.
And then, just to play on the one comment, I know how wide that lot is. It's absolutely impossible to fit the buildings onto that big chunk of land directly behind the condos. The two planned buildings in that parking lot cannot fit on that piece of property. Just won't fit. And then on top of that, I believe you have paving and parking spot requirements. 200 foot per parking spot. At least I just looked it up and that's what it
About
said.
200 square feet.
200 square feet per parking spot, which makes it 10 by 20.
What did we did just talk about that? We said something about 100 in the new thing.
And I think you're moving down to 9 by 18
Yeah.
in the new stuff is where you're heading.
Yeah. Most pavement areas, we're gonna get smaller in our new code, or at least be broken up over a property.
And then the two-way drive in between those parking spots. The state is routinely 24, but we're going down and we're 24, we're going down to 22. Making that smaller
We're 22 now,
We're at 22 now.
and we have been.
for the two-way drive.
Mhm.
Okay. Because I thought I saw 24. The state's 24. That's kind of what their rules are. So we're gonna stay at 22, but shorten all the spaces.
More than likely, but I know we're trending smaller on paved
Okay.
area in general.
Okay, well, they're even smaller because they're 18 and 22 and 18, so they're cutting that off also.
Mhm.
So if you keep cutting a little bit off of everything, if you put it back to where it belonged with the setbacks, the right parking spots, the buildings can't fit. So I think that would have been one of our lead questions on that,
Right.
20 questions. I think that's it from me for now. Any questions?
No, we appreciate your comments. Other public comment?
Hi there, I'm Carolyn Fallon. I'm at 106 Maple Leaf. I have a question for you guys. Who determines if a variance is needed?
So to determine if it's needed, it would be in our zoning. If it's outside of zoning, you would need the variance. If you came to Jim with a project, he would say, of course, you need a variance if it's outside of zoning. So then it would come to us to determine whether you get that variance or not.
Okay, so if you're not meeting zoning requirements on their plat, okay, which there's a lot of issues that they're not. Who determines that? Since you guys don't approve the plat, and I assume it goes to
So staff is
village
looking,
Jim,
planning.
you would do that, right, Jim?
No,
No.
engineers.
Our city engineers would recommend if they need a
They
variance.
would just say that this goes against zoning and you either have to fix it. Well, they would say it goes against zoning.
right?
And then the person would have to decide if they want to fix it or if they want a variance.
So who would explain to them that they needed a variance?
I mean, it's explained in our zoning
Okay.
variance process.
Well, I know a lot of things are explained in our zoning, Bailey, but when they submitted the original plat plan to you and the second plat plan to you, all of this crap could have been avoided if you would have responded to them and said, please submit a plat that adheres to the village zoning.
But it hasn't been submitted and I
No.
haven't reviewed it.
Well, apparently you have because you sent them 23 questions.
We haven't had our engineers review anything.
Okay.
Who sent the questions, I guess is the first question.
Okay.
Who's that?
Zoning department.
Who specifically
guys?
did it go from?
I'm an
Jim, you, okay.
Okay, so Jim, why wouldn't you, to avoid all of this that's going on right now with the communities being upset, why would you not, when something is not officially submitted and they're just getting your take on, hey, well, what do you think about this? You know, I'm sure there's a lot of back and forth and I can understand, you know, that village planning would want to be involved, you know. Why would you not say, hey, guys, you know, first of all, you're submitting a plat map that doesn't adhere to our current zoning.
I am not an engineer. It isn't up to me to determine how much fits on the space.
Okay.
That's done by engineers. Our engineers talk to their engineers and they will tell them this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Just did a quick down and dirty, looked at what we thought were good questions and submitted them.
Okay,
And I think the part of the confusion here is that if you guys are submitted a plan and look at it and return questions back, that means you guys have reviewed it. Okay. It seems dishonest for you guys to say you haven't reviewed it at that point.
We have not reviewed the plans. They haven't paid for the plans. We don't send them to.
But you looked at it and asked questions back, right? So you have seen the plans.
I look at a
So
lot
you've
of-
seen the plans. Okay.
I look at a lot of things all day and I ask questions all day and I get millions of plans like these.
So then that's the better way for you to describe it is yes, we've seen the plans and we've asked some questions
so you've
than
seen,
denying that you've reviewed the plans at all, right?
Haven't reviewed them,
That you've looked at them then.
looked at them.
Okay. And you've asked questions about them. How would you describe your questions? You wouldn't call that a review? You just looked?
Yes.
That's where the entire
We haven't
problem
done
stems.
any
Yeah.
measurements.
that's where. the-
We feel like you're being dishonest when you say you haven't reviewed it, but you've looked at it and you've made interrogatories. We feel like you're being dishonest when you say you haven't reviewed the plans. So maybe it would be more accurate if you would respond and say, I haven't reviewed them, but I have looked at them. That would maybe we might feel like that's more honest.
And I think that's the whole thing at this point, that, you know, I have no confidence. Now, you say it has to go to engineering. So when they submit the plat, it's not planning that's going to decide. It has to be submitted to village engineering and then it comes back to you.
Yes,
Okay, so. Okay, so at that point, I assume the engineers have to adhere to zoning?
Yes.
Okay, and if I look at the plans after engineering has looked at it and realized that they're not adhering to zoning, who would I go to?
That's where you can come back to us or you can come back to council and you can voice your opinion. Now, as I said, this is all done with staff and we trust in our staff until they show us otherwise.
Well, apparently there's a lack of communication between you and your staff. You know,
That's why I
that,
said
that
there's-
has happened.
There's an ongoing,
Okay,
There's
and
an
I
ongoing
know that you
conversation.
guys are right now writing the new zoning, and maybe you need to put something in there that it should come back to you to review,
I'd love to. Now
you
that-
know?
That giving ourselves more power is probably not in the cards, although I'd love it to be there.
I think
It would have to go with council, maybe the charter.
well, I think I'm gonna bring it up to
Right.
council that right now, you guys have no power whatsoever. You know, you're just figureheads up here.
We have power to decide
Yeah,
on variances
right,
and
too.
certain things
Right,
like that. We have
exactly.
power that's granted to us
You
through the
know.
charter and through council.
Right, so
Essentially,
once
we're
you,
appointed by
once
council.
you zone something multifamily, you don't have any say-so then on the plat.
Inside
Right.
of zoning, we do. If we change up zoning now, if they don't apply anything, like let's say this never happened until next year, then yes, all of our new zoning would have covered this.
Mhm.
We would have had to say indirectly. But yeah, correctly how it is now, no, we don't get a lot of stuff.
Okay,
But
so
if
if
I
they,
could interject one thing, if that's okay, maybe to correct
will you
something.
talk louder, please?
Sorry. If I could interject real quick, if that's okay. You mentioned plat. As far as I understand it, this is a single piece of property.
Yeah, I don't know how otherwise to term it.
And that's fine. It just, when you talk about plat relative to zoning, you're usually talking about taking one piece and breaking it into other pieces.
Okay, so what do you call what they
This is
submitted?
just, in my opinion, and the way that I'm interpreting it, it's more like a site plan, as if you were
Okay.
to be building, say, if you boil it down to a residential piece of property, as in where somebody's going to put their home, where somebody's going to put a garage, and where somebody's going to put a shed. This isn't a replat.
Okay, it's a
which
site plan
plat
that you have.
would come to us that we would
Perfect.
look at and review, but am I interpreting that correctly, Bailey and Jim?
Yes, that's
Yeah,
correct. This
it
is-
is,
More like
okay.
a site plan. So
You're correct.
just wanted to clarify that.
Hmm.
Thank you for that.
So I just, because you've seen it and you've looked at it, you're not asking any of the quick questions. I know that you've asked about trees, and Bailey, the way that I feel, and I'm sure a lot of people feel it, and even those five up there, is that when all of this is handled the way it's been handled, and it's not above board, you work for the village, don't you? You don't work for Conklin, right? Right?
I work for council.
And you're not being paid or subsidized by Conklin in any way. Okay, then I would expect you, representing the village and zoning, that when you look at stuff, you would look at stuff and be above board. Let these guys know what's going on. It's not just secretive between you and Jim Lerner. It's not. And I will go to city council. I just think you've been deceptive. If you're representing the village, represent the village, not the people that are coming in, Conklin, Centex, everybody else. I don't care. You represent us. You're hired. You're paid by the village of Johnstown, and I would expect you to put Johnstown's best interest above any developer in this area. So, who are our city engineers? Can you, Ryan, email that to me?
Prime,
We can, yeah,
And can we get a copy of the site plan after they've approved it?
Yeah, you can go through Teresa for a public records request.
right.
Okay. Will we know when you guys have sent it to engineering for approval, when you've received anything official?
Just to clarify, they send it for review, not approval. The
Mhm.
engineers do not approve. They send it to the engineers to review, not to approve.
Okay, and the engineers review it and it comes back to planning.
Yes.
not necessarily. It might go right back to the engineering company that submitted it. We might not even see it.
Well.
If it's that far off, it would go from one engineer group to,
Engineering reviews.
right,
The final stage, where's the final stage?
it would come back for a zoning certificate. All they get on this is a zoning certificate and a curb cut.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this project is the same, and like Ben said, Ben had a great analysis of it. It would be like if you're building a house. This is a much larger project.
Right.
It affects much more people in different ways. I get it, but it's very similar on a micro level to just building one small garage. or
Yeah, so
something.
there's gonna be a lot of permits and everything that need to be
Right.
applied for.
It's just a very large project, but
Mm-hmm.
So-
in a smaller way, it operates the same as if they were going to build something down at Kroger that is a business.
So
Yeah.
Jim, you get the,
Affect you if it happens down there, but that's what that's what our staff is somewhat saying here, is that I know they get a lot of things all the time. I mean, with me being a contractor, I bounce ideas off of people all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I say, hey, I want to build this garage here. What am I looking at? And It's
Yeah.
just a sketch thing on a piece of paper. It means nothing. But with this project, obviously it means something. One small garage doesn't mean a lot other than to maybe one neighbor.
Right.
But this is a much bigger project. And
Exactly.
I understand that from the staff level. I can say that, they
I
do
just
get
think if
things all the
Conklin-
time, and I get that.
You know, if Conklin was told right from the beginning that, hey, guys, we're already looking at your plans and seeing a lot of things wrong with them, setbacks aren't adhered to, you at least need to go back and adhere to zoning setback, and then send it to me and I'll give you my opinion after I've seen it, on
Right.
other stuff, and I don't see that that's being done by the village planning. So,
So after it comes to the engineer's office, it goes to you, then you would just say, follow the engineer's report. Basically, if it didn't meet some of the requirements, then,
We would actually start our formal review process.
okay.
And, because we'll probably have questions for engineering also at the same time. And then everything becomes written. And you issue a written question and they issue a written response. If there's a change necessary, they make the change. And it gets often it gets kicked back to the engineering or the architect that submitted it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
and then if they want a variance, it will come back to you guys.
Right.
Sometimes these processes take, we're pretty quick in the village.
Mhm.
But they can take up to 5 years.
Yeah, I'll stay on it for 5 years. I just want to make sure,
You're welcome.
I just want to make sure that the zoning, whenever it's applied and we have new zoning, that everything is adhered to. Just looking at these plans right now are a joke because they don't adhere to zoning at all and definitely have to be redrawn. I just don't understand why Conklin would spend the money to have a site plan drawn that just doesn't even meet.
That's not for us to decide.
Right, okay. So, but that's for you guys to look at and give your opinion and questions to Conklin.
And that's what we did.
Okay, but you didn't address anything about setbacks.
We addressed what we thought
You
at that
asked
point in
about the
time, and that step in the process was important. It's like a tennis game. It might go back and forth 5 or 6 times. Why put out information that is not relevant?
Exactly. And what I'm saying is that if you guys would have addressed this at the beginning with these setbacks, then,
We did what we were supposed to do, period. I have no more to say. about it.
okay, yeah. So apparently then I need to talk to Jim Lerner and city council to see about the effectiveness of planning.
If you
Being
wanna
able
step
to-
back and talk to council, I would
Right.
totally agree with that.
I mean, if you're gonna look at a plan, you're gonna see it, maybe not review it, but you're gonna see it. You should at least know what you're looking at and how to interpret it and how to interpret zoning and apply it to them.
We just haven't gotten to that step. They haven't
But-
paid for their engineering review, so we can't do that.
But you can give them questions and all you have to do in the questions is say, hey, guys, you should probably apply the setbacks to whatever you're going to formally submit.
But we
And
haven't
that-
gotten there yet.
It doesn't matter, but you've gotten there enough to ask them questions and ask for trees and this and that. But if you would have asked that to begin with, it would have avoided the second set of plans being submitted with the same setbacks. That's all I'm saying is that a lot of this could be avoided and if it was talked about or in any of your questions. The setback from Maple Leaf Street has nothing to do. How far the apartment is off of Maple Leaf Street has nothing to do with a setback. The question should have been, how far is the apartment from the property line? Because that is where the setback starts. It doesn't start on a private road.
There is a building line that they were working within. The building line is part of what they did. They knew that you could not exceed the building line. It's the same as a residential home on a plot plan. There's a
Right.
building line, and they know that.
Yeah, so they're just submitting this to piss everybody off.
It's a wish list.
Yeah.
It's what it is.
Yeah, so
It's the
I
start of,
just
it's the
wish
start
we
of a
would've addressed
long-term
things up front.
process, is what it is.
Yeah, so maybe when you are writing the new things, you should figure out a way that things come back to you just to make sure it's adhering to what you guys want in zoning.
Agree. Thank you.
I'm still Mary Queen Cool, and if you guys had not asked any questions, you'd have an argument. You asked some questions and you missed the big ones. So you can ignore and refuse to answer anything else, that's just fine. But you answered the questions, we didn't. When you did, you started this. By giving them the indication you'd reviewed them, by giving us the indication you'd reviewed them. So I don't buy any of your argument. Just don't. What I would like to know from the commission is, are we going to see what comes in this office regarding this project? Or do I need to make a public records request every single week to Bailey and to you guys?
I would love to be open and honest with you guys. From what it seems like at this point, other than coming to council meetings and asking questions, which I would hope would be the best way to get answers, you may have to go the public records request route.
Let me.
Then we get
can
things
uh,
like this, like I've answered all I want to answer.
If I could ask maybe Teresa, since she would be the person to go to for this. Teresa, is it an option relative to how the request is made and then fulfilled to have an open request on a particular topic by a particular individual or group? So did you have an open request for anything having to do, or is
Each
it?
one is-
It has to be a
has to be
specific request.
individual.
So if you want to send me an email every week and ask for a certain document,
A public records request regarding any information received,
well, it can't be overly,
communicated.
it can't really be overly broad. I mean, you have to know what you're asking for. I imagine that
Correspondence between Bailey, Jim, and the Coglan Development Group.
Mhm.
Any
Yeah, just
Documents submitted
put
from
in there
them.
what you're looking for.
I will be specific.
Okay.
And as the last thing, I just want to say, I think we're being pretty generous because we've been lied to. And there's other steps we could be taking. So we're being pretty generous to come here and talk to you guys. And the way he's acting and she's acting, I think we can do everything possible to make sure some people don't stay with the village of Johnstown.
I,
'Cause their performance is horrible.
So we want to work with you guys. And like I said, there's more discussion that is going to happen on this for sure in light of last week's meeting. We're going to look into all this. We want to work with you guys before we get rid of anybody, before we go down that road, before things escalate. We want to work with you guys.
And I appreciate that.
I understand where you're coming from, believe me, because if this was happening next to my house, I would be looking at it the same way. So I totally understand that. From staff perspective, I bounce ideas off of people's staff all the time. I send stuff to Newark a lot, Pataskala a lot when we're building projects. And usually they're one-sided in the favor of whoever I'm building for. Just that's where we start out. I see what I can do to build a project. So I get that too. Usually that's one garage in the grand scheme of things is not that important.
Right.
This is a much larger project. So
And everybody knew this was very
I
important.
understand why this is much more important. But we definitely welcome you guys to come in, ask questions, go to council, ask questions, submit emails, submit public records requests, because obviously we work for you guys at the end of the day, work for the village at the end of the day.
As do these people.
Right. So, no, we welcome your opinion. We welcome your statements for sure. And we want to work with you on this, make sure that you're getting the most up-to-date information as we can.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we get the most up-to-date information as we can.
I would hope so.
So, thank you. Any other public comment? All right, go ahead and close public comment. Move on to approval of the minutes from August 10th, 2021. Make a motion to approve as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we'll move on to our zoning ordinance update. So that's Article 33 that we're on, Section 33.01 through 33.04 off-street parking. getting right into this. So,
6 years of notes.
6 years of notes is good.
You guys are more than welcome to hang around if you want. If you want to take off, you can. It gets a little dry from here. Just want to let you know, we don't take offense if people leave.
But this may be pertinent with off-street parking.
Yeah, that's true.
So I could say the notes that I have from 3 years ago, at this point, 4 years ago, have been included in the draft that are here. I just think there are some updates that have happened in the meantime. When we had him, where's, I can't remember what. OHM for the design guidelines, they did parking and signs in their original. And we told them to take those sections out because we were really only focusing on design. I know for signs,
Yeah, I have those.
okay, for parking, do you have those? Even though they are given to us, I mean, is that something?
Just see signs.
Yeah. Maybe that's something to look. I know for signs though, the way that they did that, I think was great. So I don't know if that would be something we could
I
incorporate
was
with them.
gonna send it out with the sign chapter.
Do you think they would be
Send it in
willing?
like a Word document.
I don't, okay.
It was,
talking about lights.
I had a lighting question.
So AEP was gonna switch.
I didn't know
They were
if you had
gonna
to
update some things. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're talking about-
On the aisle, we just talked about it being 22. This says 20.
Right.
We wanted it 22. What are you guys' thoughts? 20 to me is on a 90-degree parking, backing out 20 is a little tight.
It is tight, especially if you have a pickup truck or something like that.
Quad cab long bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be parking in a 9x18.
Right.
Look at the maneuvering. now.
Yeah, on Bailey's notes on the right there. 90 degrees at 20 feet. I guess Bailey, tell me, what's the trending? Is it still going down to 20? Is it?
I'm not sure.
We have some spots in the village are 9x19 now. The one I always think about is for the liquor depot and Domino's Pizza's that's one. The 10x20 works really well.
Yeah.
It'll handle a pickup truck pretty well. If you go end to end, you're gonna be right flush with it or stick out a little bit if you have a trailer hitch on it. But the 9x18, 9x19 gets really tight.
Tight.
Thinking regionally, I don't know why we would go smaller than that. I know we don't want to have any more paved surface. But when you talk about out here from a rural perspective, you're probably going to be dealing with larger trucks,
Yeah.
bigger vehicles, wider spaces, bigger mirrors and things like that. So I don't know if I would think 20,
10x20, I think is where we should be.
22.
I think Jim's talking about the space himself. You're talking about
Oh,
the aisle.
I'm talking about the
Sorry.
aisle. I thought we were still talking about the aisle. Okay, the space, what we have currently is, what do we have currently
Pretty sure it's 22.
For the space.
Yes.
And we're talking about taking it down to 20.
Well, on here, to me, 22 seems like, I think 10 by 20 for parking and 22 for an aisle works really well.
And right now we have what?
We have 10 by 20 and 22.
So we're just keeping it the same.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
I know where we just added the slants.
That's where my mind went, because we wanted to make sure there was enough space.
And there's just, we added the slants on the Brick Street. And from the, if you have a pickup truck there, you measure from the back to the curb.
Right.
It's just about 20, it's 20 feet and like 3 inches or something. It's pretty tight going through there.
Yeah.
If there's a lot of vehicles in the slants, it's pretty tight.
Well, that was my call out about trucks with ball hitches and stuff like that. So get enough clearance to drive something down there.
But that's an example of 20 feet is what I'm saying.
I wouldn't go any lower than what we have right now.
Yeah, I'd support keeping it 10 by 20, 22 aisle.
Yep.
I think my truck is 16. I'm good. Go bigger. I was afraid to go 22, but I wouldn't want to go any smaller.
Okay.
Both maneuvering lanes, 22.
Are we all agreed 10 by 20 on the spots? On the parking spots on two?
If that's what we have right now, then I'm,
I mean,
And the only times that we've lowered it is through a variance
yeah,
process.
they got a variance because they've got a tight
Remember the
site.
one? I think you were involved. in
Dentist
that one.
was, yeah, had one like that.
well, we had temporary parking when CrossFit was down off of Jersey.
That's correct. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Okay. The other callouts that I have are on the next several pages. I don't have anything on. this one. Other than a comma,
A comma.
but we don't have to put it in. Oxford commas aren't needed.
Carol, I'll tell you that
That's always optional, but I've seen it to where Oxford comma
right here
not being included
after brick.
changes the meaning of the sentence. No, that's another one. It's in the same sentence there after durable. But that's me. I like Oxford commas.
Next page.
The only one I have on this page is under, sorry, my eyes. Under location of parking spaces, number 1, proximity to street right of way. Do we need to add language there saying that they also cannot impede public sidewalks? Or is there language in there somewhere else?
Wait, I saw that.
It says parking areas shall be designed and arranged as not to allow the protruding vehicle or any portion of there over the clear zone. If we've got it somewhere else, that's fine, but I know that's in,
It's under recreational vehicles. It's not under general.
we add that in the general to not to impede pedestrian usage of public sidewalks. No, I do it all the time.
Just in that number 1, what you said? Yeah. My questions were relative to proximity to use. And then BC district required parking spaces. And making sure that those two were synced up. So in the VC district, required parking and loading spaces should be provided either on the same lot or within 300 feet of principal use in which they serve. Knowing the VC district is mainly serviced by street parking and the municipal lot, is that 300, we feel like that 300 feet works? It services 300 feet is the right measurement, is what I'm going by. don't think we have that in our current code.
An example would be what the businessman's parking lot and someone on Main Street.
Yeah,
So
because
they
the
were
VC
in-
districts. It's essentially all downtown.
Yeah.
So you, Benny, your question in at 300 feet?
Whether 300 feet is the appropriate measurement, yeah, that's the right metric.
And
Is there a measure tool on that, Bailey?
No, this is just PDF, but all the stuff in here. No. Village Center, and then fire department, and. I don't know where this
That's the pool.
So-
I might argue that we should rezone that as special use, but.
Can you jump on the auditor site and do a measure and maybe go from the insurance place on the corner to the businessman's parking lot and see if that meets it? I think that would probably be the extreme example.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to think. I didn't have a way to measure it.
It's been really slow today.
I think the businessman's parking lot is a lot closer than 300.
The 300?
Considering the width of the street and the sidewalks on
From
each
where do you
side.
want- From where?
Maybe the BT insurance on the corner to the businessman's parking lot.
How far? Maybe like the farthest corner.
Yeah.
618.
What is it, Bailey?
618.
For the farthest corner?
So you're thinking maybe 300 is too small?
I just wasn't sure. I didn't have a point of reference.
In the middle, 400.
So the slants maybe?
The middle of the slants, 277.
Does VC extend any further down North Main? But anything on North Main would have their own.
Yeah, it's just these. Well, so the other, well,
Yeah,
these
well-
places have their own,
On-site parking.
yeah. And then the fire department and then.
Yeah, the only the retail stores all have their own on, in that area. So
Would be like what, what's next to Durka's?
You have Posties and
Not the drive-through. Is it a hair place?
or after,
How far is that?
that's probably to,
Well, that's close.
oh, that's probably 150 feet,
Well,
maybe
if the crow
200.
flies, gotta walk down and around,
Oh, I think you're taking a linear, you're just going straight.
down, right? You gotta go around the building. Yeah. You go past where they used to do it.
I think 300 is fine with me. I just wanted a point of reference. And then wanting to make sure that those all jive together, the Village Center District contains small lots, served by on-street parking, municipal parking lot, justified non-residential uses, must provide only 25% of required space. So, with that being said, that feels fine to me as well. I don't have any thoughts on that page. Sorry. I'll go with like, if it's on, it's on. It is on. Okay. I was just saying I don't have any other comments on that page. But yeah, so I'm good with that, that page there.
Next page.
And for me, the next section for me starts with section H, which is parking limitations in residential districts. And
Okay.
that's where I had some call outs that it might be best, considering the update to zoning that we had with the commercial trucks and residential lots, that's something we want to make sure to add in for number 5 specifically.
Mhm.
Is the verbiage there and make sure that dump trucks are added to that. You got it. All right. I'll go second next time, sorry. But also thought that because if you look at numbers 1 through 5, the first 3, I feel like have a lot to do with recreational equipment, and the next 2 are maybe about the commercial trucks and things like that. That maybe it's best to separate those out.
Okay.
Because I also think with the recreational uses that we need to add in what we already have under 1175.11, which are several of these parking of trailers and recreational vehicles on residential property. There are several things that we have on the books right now that I feel should be pulled over to the updated code.
What section? 1175.11.
1175.11, specifically A, C, E, F, G, and I are in our current code, but aren't in this, so.
Okay.
Unless
And the-
anybody's passionate about it, I don't know why we
Do
wouldn't.
you think B covers that? 5, go down to B, parking commercial vehicles with a gross rate greater than 4 tons is prohibited?
Well, we should probably just make the wording the same as what we have.
Yeah,
Because
that would be the same as what we,
talks about it.
Jay, in our current code,
no, I'm talking about here,
in B, did I miss B?
yeah. 5 and then B.
I don't have a 5B.
It means HB.
Each,
I'm sorry, it would be HB.
I don't
Yep.
have an HB.
The 1 through 5 and then B.
Yeah, I think I might have,
Yeah, this isn't,
but I'll make sure it's the same.
okay.
Okay,
Okay. Yeah, which is the verbiage that we had, yeah, okay. So my fault maybe for not looking at the updated one online, sorry. But those are the callouts that I had with that, is that it's probably best to separate them out, have recreational separate, because I think there's a lot more pieces that we'd want to bring over from our current code into this, which is where I saw that Ron, not to impede the sidewalk as well. That's everything I had before the table.
With the recreational vehicles, you have it all in front of you.
I have everything in front of me.
What's the language on pop-ups?
What?
What do we have for language on like pop-ups or slide outs?
it falls under RV.
I just mean when parking them, like when they're stored, like do we word anything about how they store them?
Side or rear?
I just mean like you got a fifth wheel and you got all your slides out, which would make people think somebody's in it, right? Even if they're not.
Doesn't
Just-
specifically say anything about,
I just wondered if we needed language just because I know that it's one of the things, but people can't live in them. And how do we tell?
are you able to bring up the current code? Maybe that'll help.
Just thinking out loud of like, how do we, you know what I mean? If you drive by, lots of people store their campers or their slide outs out because it's a smart thing to do.
Sure.
But if you're gonna have to go around and police it, or somebody's gonna go around and police it,
Hmm.
you're a code enforcer, and you got your slides out, how would you know? If somebody's living in it, if they're not living
Probably
in
the
it?
same as if somebody's living in a garage. I mean, you're probably, you're
Watching
not gonna
TV.
know.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
You know, the police department's always been really good about that. They'll send me an email and say certain address has someone sitting in a camper watching TV at 11 o'clock at night. So I usually go knock on the door. Sometimes I take a police officer with me.
I mean, obviously I look at a lot of houses, we drive around a lot for work and like, I notice it more often than not now,
Yeah.
because it's camper season that like, you drive by and I'm like, is somebody living there? Or is it like, are they just storing it? Like, you know.
Well,
like-
here's what I'll say is you look at the current code, there are a couple that I did not include to bring over in my suggestion. Current code has said trailer or recreational vehicle shall not be used for dwelling purposes except one recreational vehicle may be used for dwelling purposes for a maximum of 14 days in any calendar year. Cooking and use of butane and propane fuel shall not be permitted any time. That's D. And
We chose
in
not to bring that
my
up.
suggestion was not to bring that over.
Well, yeah, cause then you get
That's,
to the hot one
again-
anyways, cause you're gonna be running propane
that is my suggestion.
regardless. If you're doing- I don't know.
But then there's also other pieces in here that don't seem to be relevant or are covered in other sections, but said trailer recreation vehicle should not be permanently connected to a sewer. You can't do that anyway. You're not allowed to dump that stuff regardless, even permanent or not permanent, which none of that is really permanent. Not to be used for the storage of goods, materials, or equipment other than those items to be considered part of the unit or essential for its immediate use. Can't be parked anywhere at the residence. Not to exceed, let's see, may be parked anywhere at the residence during active loading and unloading, not to exceed 3 hours, and the use of electricity or propane fuel is permitted when necessary to prepare. It also talks about not living in it, can't be used as a residence or anything like that, or using any of the equipment unless it's being cleaned or being set up to be used
I was just wondering,
immediately.
it's literally just from, I've been in the Hocking Hills region a lot recently. And I just like, you drive by and you're like, does somebody live there? Do they not? And then I was like, well, when people park there, it's like, we have a lot of people. I have a camper in my driveway.
Yeah.
But just policing it, just from
Yeah.
like the prospect of like, it's more likely that somebody may be staying in it if the slides are out. You know, it
Yeah.
just is like I didn't know what we wanted to,
I don't know if that's something, like I said, in my opinion, it feels like policing if somebody's living in your garage or something like that, or ADUs like we talked about before.
with the flags out then. Yeah.
you normally cover
You
it
go
up.
camping
Normally
for
covered
a
up,
week or
but-
so, and then you come back and
Well,
you
that's what
have
I'm
them
saying.
out.
Air 'em out.
Airing 'em out, yeah.
If that's the way that people like.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, because you put your whole family in there for a week, and then, yeah, when you come back, you just leave it open for a bit, everything open. But your kids are in and out there messing around, playing in it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to,
So then how do
know
you
what
know?
all
It's
you're
something you gotta watch. It's something you just have to watch. The people who abuse it are gonna get caught, but
yeah, they probably got
your
they probably got a cord around their camper.
yeah, your casual weekend deal, they're not, that's what it is, but
I might,
they're abusing it, you'll get caught.
I might also add H, because I don't think in our current code, it states where they should be, where they should park. But I don't know. So H says trailers with non-commercial cargo, recreational vehicles, things like that, shall not be permitted to park or shall be permitted to park only in the side or rear yards and provided the total weight of the trailer and cargo is less than 5,000 pounds. So I think we want to make sure that we maintain the side and rear yard aspect of it. Does the weight limit matter?
Well,
I'd say,
And again, how do you,
location matters more than the size of it.
that's my thought as well.
well, yeah, I'd say the weight limit's only gonna come into factor when you're where you live. And it's probably gonna be, if you're in Leafy Dell and you're smacking the sidewalk every time you pull your, 15,000-pound fifth wheel in, yeah.
What do we have we have a weight limit on this,
Yeah.
trucks, right?
Yeah, we do.
Which I think
Yeah.
is 4 tons.
So if anything, you probably want those to be the same for the same rationale, right?
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you park it though, because if you don't pull it over a sidewalk, it's not really a big.
Yeah,
deal.
because your stuff has to be stored on concrete,
Sure.
so you can't store it in your back or side yard anyway unless you build a concrete pad for it.
Correct. It's supposed to be on a paved.
Surface. So I'd say the weight limit should be the same. The maximums, in my opinion.
I don't know. It's like 4,000, you might prevent some, but 5,000 cover everybody.
You got 32-foot Baja?
That's what I'm saying. Wow, no.
Got a long
I don't know
driveway too.
boats.
A regular ski
I mean,
boat's
if you
gonna
had
be
a
like
cab-
500 pounds.
If you had a
Big ski boat's could be like 500.
If you had a cabin cruiser, maybe you parked it. I mean, you can park a
Yeah.
cabin cruiser in a driveway if y'all own a driveway.
People have boats that go to Lake Erie, you got a sizable boat.
Right. I mean, you could have a cabin cruiser.
Usually you have
but-
that storage.
So if you're,
somewhere, but-
that's what I'm saying, but he said our commercial vehicle one was 4,000, right?
Yeah.
So we wouldn't want to lower it to 4,000. I think that would be precluding some of your larger,
I see
but
what you're
reasonably
saying.
sized boats.
Yeah, because
okay?
I mean, most people are pulling
I
your.
don't want
pulling
to,
your
I don't want to
driveway.
bring, you can't bring a houseboat in, right? But 5,000 pounds is a good limit on a boat. 4,000, you might be precluding some of your Lake Erie boats, okay? That's my
Which you're probably not gonna have at your house other than maybe for like the 2 days before you go to Lake Erie.
Well, I mean, 5,000 pounds,
yeah.
you just took fifth wheels out. You can't park fifth wheel. Dude, they weigh too much. They're like 6'7".
Well, so if we're gonna make them an agreement, then my proposal would be
And you probably couldn't have. a
raise the
class A, you
commercial
probably
one to
couldn't have
5,000. How does that, where does that put us on trucks? But Jim had a pretty close analysis on trucks.
think
and
we
it
got-
was
Yeah,
about
I-
4,000. So maybe we should just.
You don't have to have a C
Yeah.
prohibitive. What's a class C weigh?
We looked at Ford 550, four-wheel drive, four-door, long bed. I think it came in at 4 ton and some odd pounds.
What's like a class C weigh though? 25-foot class C RV.
I don't know.
It's gotta weigh 8.
Probably, you would think.
So the standard,
Especially if you got water in your tank.
That's true, actually. So I'm thinking, if you're thinking, we're talking about
You can
recreational
tech,
vehicles.
and you should be able to park a class C. I mean, class C.
If a boat's, if a boat's 3,500, then a trailer's gonna be more. So maybe that should be our benchmark for recreational vehicles, right?
We have one home I know on Tyler Station, and the gentleman, he built the house and he has a Greyhound bus.
Yeah, you got like an A size, right?
Yeah. And he had a pad made for it and he covers the wheels and all that. It sits there so many months a year and then the rest of the time on
Right.
the road.
Yeah, I mean, if you
Built the
covered it,
house for it.
it's not, it's out of, if it meets all the requirements, I mean, the weight limit's kind of,
Yeah.
I don't know if we definitely
know
need
what
the
it
weight
weighs.
limit because, I mean, if you got a class A and you got, it's full, you fill the water tank up and cause you're going out somewhere, like that thing's gonna weigh a ton. I mean, it is a little different than parking most people that are doing that, and it's not like parking a dump truck. and
Is our
stuff.
weight limit enforceable?
Well, you're gonna,
Yeah, it is.
it is.
The police department can address it.
the point of the weight limit with the commercial vehicles was really to ensure protection of infrastructure,
Yeah,
Correct.
cause that's daily wear and tear.
right?
Most people aren't taking their camper RV out daily. And most people are pulling in their driveway, which isn't gonna go over.
Well, it's something that people don't want in their neighborhoods. They don't want a dump truck or a semi tractor parked in their neighbor's
Yeah,
driveway.
you don't want the noise of that engine, but the fifth
No.
wheel's not causing.
And they
any
leak
noise.
oil and they leak hydraulic fluid and, yeah.
As long as you power wash your fifth wheel every once in a while, it's not gonna get too bad like.
Yep.
So if we're talking about deviation from the standard, which the standard is what it
Yep.
is now, how has the standard worked for us thus far with anything that you've had to enforce?
I really haven't had any issues. We might have some pretty soon because the parking lot on Track Street after September 1st, they're not allowed to be parked there. So I don't know where those are all going to go.
Oh, they've been definitely coming down the road too. Dumps today. Go right there.
They will not be going in that area anymore. So
But with respect to recreational vehicles and things like that, have you had to enforce?
Boats or SUV, or I mean, trailer campers.
He probably
Yeah,
gets it if they're
that's
too
what
close to the sidewalk. And
That's-
it's probably slim. to
and I
nothing.
have had that one. I had where the tongue of it was on the sidewalk. And I have received complaints about that. Had it moved.
Yeah, because most people and they probably
That would be
popped
our
it in
front yard,
4 days to
right?
get it out. They probably went, picked it up, dropped it in their driveway right before they left.
So maybe we just keep it the same then.
Yeah.
If it hasn't been an issue, we just keep it
What was
Yeah,
it?
I'd say keep that
5,000.
language in there.
I think we should take it out. I mean, I think you should be able, if you have a class C, 20-foot RV, what's the difference between that and having a 25-foot trailer in your driveway? I mean, the weight is the only difference, right?
Right.
Because it's gonna be a dually, it's already gonna put it up. If it's full of water, it's gonna be heavy. You probably put 100 gallon on there, 200 gallon of water. I mean, gallon's heavy.
8 pounds.
But maybe those aren't allowed to be parked in your side driveway.
Yep. Now you're like really splitting hairs on the like, why can somebody park a 30-foot trailer in their driveway? But I can't park one that has wheels. Cause mine weighs more.
I think people are more accepting of RV
Yeah,
than they are a large truck.
right. I think the truck is a different story. It's not a recreational vehicle. It's a little different.
I'm fine either way.
Oh, I think there should be a limit, but I don't see, I think that a huge trailer parked right next to someone's up.
I mean, like, you gotta think, like, your driveway's how long?
If Ben's and Jesse's driveway, like their lots are set up in a way, if if he had a fifth wheel giant trailer back there, you'd never see it.
Right.
Ben's too, you'd never see it. My house, totally different.
Yeah, but you're not gonna be able to get
I
it in.
couldn't-
You can't get it in your driveway because it won't fit. Now,
Lengthwise, lengthwise in mine would, because it goes up next to the house.
If you have
but
the one, if you
yeah.
have the Rolling Meadows house where it goes all the way to the back, where
Mine goes
your
all the way to the
two-car
back of the house,
garage is
yeah,
about in your back, the end of your backyard,
yeah.
and you can fit one in there, why should you not be able to park your camper in your driveway?
I feel like with this one, if it's not broke, there isn't anything that really needs to be fixed. I think we just leave it as it is.
I just think it's the like, he doesn't do it, but what in 5 years? And you got all these people that are upset because we're like, oh, well, Ben and John have 30-foot campers in their yard and I wanted to have an RV and now I can't. Why?
I'm with Ben. I like say leave it.
If it hasn't been an
Any
issue,
other votes?
You're talking based on the weight alone.
Yeah, just the weight, that's all. Cause you still have to make all the other requirements. Like you can't park, you don't have a long enough driveway, you can't have it.
Right.
If you don't have a driveway to park it in, you can't.
And it has to be in your driveway. It can't be in your
Right.
yard.
And if you break
That's
your,
the biggest,
if you break
that
your
was the only thing
driveway,
that
if
I
you-
was
if
for is
you-
I don't want it
yeah.
I don't want it in your yard. If it can
has
be
to
in your
on concrete,
driveway,
Yeah.
that's fine. I
It's-
don't want grass.
It's gotta be
growing
on the
around
side
it. I don't
too.
want it-
It can't be in your front yard driveway.
Right.
Maybe in the side.
side or rear.
We don't
Yeah,
have
side
a
or
front yard,
rear.
They can't have a
It
front.
has to be
yard.
10, I think it's 10
11.
foot from the sidewalk.
11 feet from the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's
11
11.
feet.
Yep.
And if you break the sidewalk going into your driveway, you gotta replace
You
it
gotta
anyway.
fix your sidewalk anyway.
You own it.
That's never gonna happen in this town though.
I just replaced all my driveway and sidewalk because the last guy broke it all up, never replaced it.
I just know that we have a lot of people. I mean, if you drive around here, a lot of people have RVs.
Big RVs.
And
Not even
they-
necessarily big ones. It's just that they weigh a lot.
and they have them, and they have them under our current code.
But that's because we don't go around nitpicking them.
So then why change the code?
Only if I get a complaint.
But what if? But that's what I'm saying. Is,
All right, to John's point,
We're not saying you, but like the next.
the code doesn't match reality. The
yeah,
code
that's
doesn't
what I'm
match
saying.
reality.
We're not just because we're not enforcing it doesn't mean that we shouldn't change it. Because what if the next person that comes in does, and they go up and all these people that have historically had an RV, what if you parked
Then
yours
we
in
got
your
problems.
driveway for 15 years?
So we need to research how much
Hey, sir, you can't have that in your driveway. Now they're like, now it costs me $800 to park it down the road.
Historical precedence has an application unless explicitly outlined otherwise.
I mean, yeah,
we don't know what, no one knows what a big camper weighs, do we?
look it up.
Class A is.
Let's
Class
do,
A
a-
is definitely gonna be a lot with a full.
let's do a medium-sized camper. Let's do class B, okay, or whatever, class C, yeah, like a small regular size camper. I don't want a huge behemoth. Like, that's a different issue if a huge behemoth camper is parked.
24-foot motorhome is 4,400 pounds.
So that's
Not sure what class that
If
is,
you're
but-
that into camping, you probably have already made other arrangements.
It
or
says
don't
it cannot,
live
class C's cannot exceed 10,000
on a small lot. You probably have some cash. to
is
throw around.
is the definition of what makes it a class C. Can't exceed 10,000 pounds.
How big is the class thing?
A class C is,
6 to 11.
it could go, a class C could go anything. I think they have them up to 30. It's anything that's not that isn't is not a semi, like a class A would be anything that looks like a bus. A class C is what has a pickup cab. So like a box truck, the ones that look like box trucks.
Don't break, it's not broken, don't fix it. Unless we got 3 votes, otherwise, let's move on.
Yeah, if you want to come up to the podium.
John Luke, 6 West Street Drive. I guess I'm just trying to figure out what the difference between upping it to 10,000, like from 5,000, what's the actual harm to the village? I know we were talking about infrastructure, but we're talking about parking.
Are you talking about?
So I mean, they don't really look significantly different. It's not like you're allowing something that looks super terrible into the village. I guess I'm thinking it's not broken, but what's the harm in allowing that? If we up it to 10, is there really the opportunity for abuse versus allowing someone who spent a lot of money to have a really nice RV?
There's an
Parked
opportunity
at the
for
house.
abuse. You can abuse any of these laws.
I mean,
Happen all the time.
that's- But I guess I'm just not seeing the harm to the village in allowing something that could potentially happen down the road. 'Cause, I mean, that,
For me, it's that,
Gross.
it's the aesthetics of the size of the vehicle.
right, I mean, but especially as we get into solar, batteries are heavy. So you get a class C with a solar, a portable solar array, you're talking 2,000 pounds of batteries and solar panels. I mean, obviously you don't want them set up in the yard, but it has to be stored somewhere when it's not. So I see a lot of these that just have storage underneath. So you're talking about another 2,000 pounds in solar power alone on top of, what do we say, $4,600 or 4,600 pounds for what it normally is. So then they're over. And if somebody wanted to nitpick, then we have to tell them that because they're getting their power for free, they have to go somewhere else. So I guess I just am not seeing the harm in it. I didn't know if you guys had an idea for what that harm would be. Would just be curious to hear what it was.
First, to address your premise, I don't think we're gonna walk up to anybody and say, because you're getting your power for free, you gotta move your camper somewhere else.
Right, but I also don't want your solar panels out. I mean, a lot of it's aesthetics, some of it's weight on the driveway, weight, maintenance, wear and tear, people not keeping their stuff up. I mean, that comes into factor. I mean, what you do with the trailer, I mean, the more weight you can hold, the more stuff you're gonna have, the more, the more it starts to unfurl out from the camper. Your camper starts to spread. We all know how stuff goes. So, I mean, being unsightly, stuff like that, we want to keep things nice. So that's the biggest thing. And I know each person has their opinion of what looks nice, but when it starts to affect, my biggest thing is you can do what you want on your property to an extent, but when it affects your neighbors or it affects the infrastructure or stuff like that, that's when it becomes public domain for comment. Certain things, but if there's a way to mitigate that from happening in the future, that's why we stopped massive, semis and stuff like that from coming up through. It's going to break up the sidewalk, so just stop the trailer from coming up through. It's not ever going to break the sidewalk, then you have to police it later. It's got enough to do already.
My point in initially equivocating the two was because the conversation around the commercial trucks was aesthetics to a point, but we also talked a lot about daily wear and tear, effect on infrastructure, usage, curbs, sidewalks, things like that. The frequency of use absolutely affects how that is going to impact your infrastructure. And so the lower weight limit makes absolute sense in that case. Equivocating it to a recreational vehicle wherein the frequency may be less, but the impact on infrastructure at that moment in time is still the same. So I think that gives you a little bit of wiggle room, to Jesse's point, in keeping it at 5,000 instead of the 4-ton like we have with the commercial. So you up it a little bit more because the frequency isn't as much, but the impact on the infrastructure is still there. So if we were to take it and move it from 5 to say 10, then I'd say we probably need to go back and revisit the 4-ton with the commercial piece of it to a certain extent to make them relatively the same. The wiggle room, in my opinion, between 4 and 5 is probably more relevant to the frequency of use and the type of vehicle that it might be there. So that's what I'm saying. Reality to current state too. If it's not, if it isn't something that is causing a major issue at the moment, I don't necessarily see the need to increase it by 2 times. Is my point of view. But frequency to infrastructure may be more of a coherent
We
argument.
address their weights on roads all the time, especially side streets. They don't let major semis go down them because you gotta replace them more frequently, which is added cost to the village, which we don't need because we have enough trouble with the roads we have. So if everybody shows up with a 5th wheel and drives that thing down the road every weekend, your road's gonna tear up real fast.
I just mean because, for example, the one that Jim talks about, the guy does everything by the book.
Correct.
His neighbor sells his house. Historically, he's allowed to park it there. I buy the house. I'm the new neighbor and I don't like it. And I know that there's a weight limit, and I go up to Jim and I say, what's the village doing? This is ridiculous. Now this guy that spent how much money putting in his extra parking pad, he maintains all the other requirements, his sidewalk's not tore up. It's like, it's not fair to the people that, most of the people that are doing it correctly, right? That
Well, deviations to the zoning plan also can have a variance hearing in that case. So you could have a variance from that perspective and it could be granted for storage there on that kind of situation.
Yeah, but you're really splitting hairs with the person next to them. Are you appeasing the person that's been doing it? Or are you appeasing the person that lives next to them? Which is like where it gets hard, right? Because like I might want an 8-foot fence, but and maybe I can get a variance for it because I have some reason, but my neighbor might hate it. And now it's like who's right and who's wrong. Like we have a 6-foot fence rule for a reason. So it's like
Well, that's the arbitration point of the variance hearing.
it just gets, we just have, there's a lot of people that do it and it could get real. It takes just a couple people and then everybody could want it. And then
Sure.
then we're back here talking about it. And it's like,
Yeah, the variance should be exception, not the rule. For sure.
Correct.
If it becomes more of a frequency, then that's where, as a zoning commission, you go back and revisit what's on the books and whether or not.
You're gonna have a variance after the fact there. Cause if the neighbor comes in and complains, the trailer's already always been there, it's never been a problem. You're gonna have a variance after the fact, that's gonna be fun.
Variance after the fact.
So you're saying, under the current rule, the guy
It's
comes
illegal.
in, under the current rule, it's illegal. But nobody cares. Mike's a nice guy. We all like Mike. His trailer's cool. He's a cool guy, But new guy moves in, other new guy moves in. They don't like Mike. They come in for his trailer. And we give Mike his trailer because Mike's always done the right thing. And he's got the precedence, the past precedence there. And you're doing a variance after the fact. That's what you're saying?
No, I'm saying you don't grant a variance based off of somebody's character.
No,
You give the variance based off of the
Yeah, but if
requirements
you're
that are in the
You're
zoning.
saying right now,
If he does it,
rule for 10 years, then you're still
saying right
wrong. You
now,
shouldn't get a
people are
variance.
doing it, but it's not a problem. We're not enforcing it.
well,
I'm
because
saying
his
that there's
property,
also
because he
storm-
has the right property, designed his property for his trailer. He's got a nice parking spot for it. And then he would easily be given a variance for it. If someone didn't have if
A
it's,
variance after the fact.
Because the point also is
He should-
you're allowed to have.
he
a
should
trailer.
come in for a variance tomorrow, today,
You
probably.
can have your dump truck if it's in a garage.
So the weight limit isn't coming into factor there.
So you could, to your point, you could have a garage requirement.
Like that's another question, I guess.
That's what we did. We said if you have it.
If you
can it in
have,
a garage.
if you have a garage to put it in, you can park it.
Right.
So are we?
Do we put that caveat for
the
this
weight-
trailer
You
thing?
couldn't. I guess our rule doesn't make sense because you can't have a 8,000 pound dump truck at all because it doesn't meet the weight requirement. So that our caveat kind of didn't work there.
This is just for recreational we're talking about now, though.
No, but what I'm saying is because we did put that is in there. The language is in there that you could possess a dump truck
If you have a garage.
if it's covered, is what we said. But then we put a weight limit on it, which I would assume is only the precedence if it's outside the garage.
Yeah. That's right. If it's over
So we're
4,000 pounds, it has to be in the garage.
So we're not really the wear and tear, you get what I'm saying? Some of our points that we make get a little mute.
If it's
because
over
we're-
4 ton,
Right.
Yeah.
it's 8,000, so it'd be 8,000 pounds.
Well, then I need to reference.
A 38-foot
So the wear and tear part,
goes up to about 8,500 pounds.
We look the other way on their wear and tear.
So,
put it in your garage.
if you put it-
That's what I'm saying.
I get where you're going with the wear and tear part, but it's also the noise factor for the neighbors is why we decided to put it in the garage and ultimately.
Right, correct. But what I'm saying is if it's over 4,000 pounds, you can't have it unless you put it in a garage.
Yeah.
So you still got to hear it when they come in. Still goes in the garage. And when they leave, the secondary reason is most people aren't going to put it in the garage. That's why we did the garage. It makes you really have to work to get it, right? So it's a compromise from both.
Well, what we
angles.
wanted to shield was.
Right, it was a compromise.
Right, right.
Because if you
Yeah,
have
the
the
Mack
small
truck.
business, you can build the garage. But if you're just a guy who likes to have a big truck, well then build the
Right,
garage or
right.
don't have the truck.
Yeah,
I want to shield the small business.
right.
owner.
And the only point I'm making with the weight requirement is I just don't want people that do have a precedence that have had their stuff there to get. It just takes one person to complain about it, and then all of a sudden now it's a problem.
Nah, I understand that part.
I mean, your neighbor has his what's in his backyard? It's a camper, but he uses it for food. How much that thing weigh? uses it for food, for the diner. They have the
Oh,
camper that's for.
It's like
it's
this
got- it's
dude's
probably got-
storing food back
No,
there.
It's probably got,
That's a
it's probably got,
problem.
probably got
That's a
fryers,
problem.
it's probably got fryers and every other thing in it. Probably weighs a
Oh,
ton.
well, as long as he's not storing food all the time.
You know what I mean?
guess,
Like,
I don't
you
know.
probably never look outside and think about it twice. It probably weighs more than the weight limit that we're talking about.
Well, he has a driveway that,
But he has the
In the
driveway,
rear,
he can
too.
fit it in there, right? So it's,
So I could be persuaded to go with a length or a size limit on the recreational vehicle other than a weight limit. And I think that would accomplish my point of being too, my whole thing with a weight limit was more focused on size, I guess, in my mind. Because the size is what creates the problem if you're parked in a tight area for me.
Yeah, size, cleanliness, and noise is what makes the neighbor complain.
So if you guys want to go change it to a size thing, I would be on board. Is that what would you want
I
to do
think we
that?
have length on the commercial vehicles too.
Would you guys want to do length? Is that what you're saying?
Thought we
Ryan, would you want to do length?
links.
We just
No.
have 4 tons.
just put tons.
We just have weight.
Because it covered, the weight covered it.
Mhm.
You guys want to do length instead of size? I'll negotiate. I'm on board if you guys want to do length instead of size. Is that what you want to do?
Yeah, like you limit it under 35 feet. It's a big,
I'd say go lower than that if you want to get me my vote.
we'll put it this way. You see mine's 23.
So let's go.
Better, we
Under
could do it
30.
by class. I
And
mean,
you could do it by class.
I think class is
Class
probably
is
the
the
way to
easiest
go.
one.
Class
That's
B
the way
is
to go.
6,000 to 11,000 pounds.
Otherwise, you're gonna have a guy with a tape measure out there in the dark trying to figure this out.
I say
You
is
just say the class, then he already knows. when
Class
he-
A's can be 60
When he's
feet.
looking at the trailer, he'll know.
The Class A can be 60.
You just said class fees can be 30 feet too, 35 feet.
The Class A can be up to 60.
But I
With a
don't-
Trailer can be 100 foot. You have to get a special.
I'll go 30 feet max.
Unless you have a garage.
Unless you have a garage.
Yeah,
Twenty-
I mean, most are under 35 feet, but
I'm fine with that. I reread the piece of it. We talked a lot about the infrastructure piece, but the way that it worded is really, it is right. It's really more so around the aesthetics of it. So that's a fair call out. So I'm fine with that if we want to use 30 feet as metric.
we could, I mean, we could just almost, you could use the, yeah. I mean,
Take out the weight, 30 feet.
We're going with the class is what we're going with. We're going by class or are we going by
30 feet.
Okay.
Where would that go? And they're going under B, parking of commercial vehicles with a gross weight, and then add in or motor vehicles over 30 feet as prohibited.
And we're just talking about recreational rate on this one.
Oh, we were talking about H.
I think it's
Oh, it's
under the
H.
old one.
HB.
Yeah, there it is.
There's only trailers with non-commercial cargo.
The new one?
No, in the old one. You're talking
Yeah, that's the new one. Sorry.
The 30 feet metric that we're using is for recreational vehicles, yes? Okay, so it would be that H that you're talking about, Bailey.
in this new one.
Correct,
So we're taking out the 5,000 and replacing it with the 30 feet.
correct. That's fair.
His brain's gonna explode.
I had to reread the 1175.12.
I just remember that like whole conversation, and I'm like, man, like
No, it's,
we're like splitting hairs with our argument on this because it's, I don't want to be like, well, you can't drive a big truck, but
that's valid. That's valid. The way that I had recalled 1175.12 wasn't accurate to what we were talking about. So the
You're right.
call out,
Don't-
it's a
don't open
valid
that-
call out.
Don't open that can of worms.
Yeah.
eh?
No one is, I guess.
30 foot is big.
All right.
That's why. 'Cause this is-
But yeah, this is.
You have anything else, Ryan?
The only other thing
It's
I
on the
had
table.
on the table is, do we need that language under the title Schedule of Required Off-Street Parking Spaces. Just so they know, this includes the garage stalls would count. If they're off-street parking spaces. Did not
Like at a,
on a house or anything. I mean,
yeah.
Right now, for a single or multi-family resident, we require 2 parking spaces, and this is a reduction to 1.
so in a single family home on this, they would only need 1 parking spot.
Yeah, I think that should be 2 myself.
Yeah.
You could have a couple.
You're saying the minimum's required for everything.
Yeah, the minimum right
What
now
you're
is
saying,
one.
minimum, but you could have more.
Right.
Obviously, up to 4.
Numbers are different.
And the max they could have is 4. Okay.
For me, I feel like the table, our current maximum seemed to be, what do we have, the current state appears to be the maximums that are on here. So the minimums, if anything, have gone down so that we won't see any more paving than what we have right now. If anything, we would
Hopefully
encourage
less.
less.
Yeah.
And so when interpreting this, the notes that I put, the maximum number, the purpose and intent of this parking is the max number of spaces to promote visitation, proprietorship, employment, absolute minimum impact in order to preserve rural character, green space, and the overall aesthetics of the area. The way I'm looking at it, we're really trying to encourage walkability, carpooling, multimodal access, shared parking spaces, where appropriate, minimizing paved surface area lots, especially in undeveloped like infill lots. And in my opinion, rather look at approving fewer spaces than have a minimum but have it not be met, in my opinion. Because I don't want to see anything else like we have with Kroger right now. Is you've got this wide expanse where you're spending more to repair it or plow it than anything. And you see it in Meyer on Hamilton Road, where they've developed all those parking spaces out there that they didn't need. But I don't want to see us get to that point where we've got too many spaces than what we have. So I think we've had some variances recently where we've done shared lots. I think if there's any way to do that, maybe get in a situation like a shared driveway. But if you can share lots with like off cadence use, where somebody uses it for use in the AM and somebody else uses it for use in the PM, is that a creative way that we can get, for like,
It's,
Yeah.
that's so they do that in Polaris. So for example, do you know where Mettler Toledo is?
yeah,
And then all the business in front of it have
Yeah.
like 5 parking spots, but
Yeah.
Mettler Toledo gets all of that. So one of the restaurants there, their chain approved lunch, and they like couldn't do the lunch because they don't have the parking. So it
Yeah.
seemed like it could like hinder. It's like a weird gray area because it could hinder somebody's business if you were to change your business model slightly. But I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
So for me, I think it might be interesting, some things to put in the verbiage in this document might be suggestions from commission about creative ways to reach the parking space with minimum impact on the area. So maybe emphasizing, looking at shared lots or incorporation of smaller car spots, EV charging stations. What's that?
Compact space.
Compact spaces, EV charging stations. Things like that. EV charging stations might be interesting. I mean,
I think New Albany put that in there. I think that
Do.
you have to put the green. You have to put. I think it's 1 for most businesses.
I don't know if I'm in a place where I think we should require it so much as maybe
suggestion.
just put it in the narrative as a suggestion to look at as we continue to look at a mobility hub and things like that, and multimodal access within the village. Connectivity with sidewalks is big. But if there's any way to, you know, somebody coming in to Johnstown from the outside might not necessarily think about that aspect when you look at a rural space like Johnstown, but we know where we are. Everybody else might not know where we are. So if we put that in the narrative, it might help generate some ideas for a business owner coming in, looking at parking requirements, say, okay, well, at least they're open to shared spaces or EV charge or something like that. So
When you EV charge, do you pay for it or is it just like free electric? How's that
I
work?
think during business hours it's free.
I think that's probably an agreement you have between the utility provider, am I right? Like with,
During most of those, during their open business hours, the charging is
So they just
free.
give you free electricity?
Right. They probably get a break on it. There's probably a secondary meter on it, just like if you have irrigation lines.
Get free electricity at Starbucks when you go in there and drink your coffee and plug your computer in.
That is true.
AP has a special
Right.
rate for that too.
They probably have I would assume they have a different meter.
well, they were the ones I'm thinking of because they had a grant program several years back where they were asking folks to apply for EV charging stations.
But we weren't within their grant area. That's what
Is
happened.
that what it was? I never heard the outcome to that, but I don't think it's a bad idea. I know I've heard of questions being entertained about why Johnstown doesn't have
You-
EV charging stations in particular places, as in the municipal parking lot, et cetera. I mean, potentially the trailhead, the municipal parking lot would be an easy one.
Tesla charger in there.
You know, Kroger station, the Kroger area is easy. It's private business, but
I think if we did shared parking lots, you'd almost want the suggestion would maybe be like it. I think it gets hard because it's like a real estate nightmare.
well, shared parking lots, in my opinion, would be something akin to a conditional use.
Right. It would almost be like they'd have to like donate it and then the village would have to maintain it probably.
No, we have an agreement right now with the business to private parcels on 62 that have requirements but share spaces via written agreement between the two. Whereas if the one business were to expand any more than what they are right now, they'd be required to pave the green space they have behind them to fulfill that. And that's the mechanism by which,
So
you
if
know,
one person isn't living up to the agreement, the other person can sue them instead of coming to us to
Right,
fix it.
I think
That's
of it.
fun
I think of
for-
it as if
fun
if
for
you're
real
going to
estate.
upgrade your building
People will
size and you
walk.
go to sell
I'll just say it now.
and you can't. Whenever you have some sort of deed restriction, it like muddies the water. It's hard for people to sell their property. Like
Sure.
that shared driveway, like the ACE, like that's a whole. They sign up for a lot by taking that on, right?
isn't that then incumbent upon you as a business owner to,
But then when I'm saying from a prospective business coming in from a real estate position, it makes people,
You'll always be a plan B.
it's a less desirable thing to do. So like,
Lowers your property value basically.
right. So like,
Sure.
it's like when we talk about what are the like things that we should do for development and we shouldn't do because we want people to come in and develop us, but we don't want people to do X, Y, and Z. And it's like, if we too much on it, you really, I mean, I think shared parking is great. Like I absolutely, yes, less parking. It's nice, that's why strip malls are good because it's like, oh yeah, here's all your spots. You get help. It gets like, as a suggestion, it's definitely great. I think we should put it in a suggestion.
yeah, I don't think we put it in as a requirement or any mechanism where it's a default, but I think to get people thinking about creative ways to be more connected rather than having a paved surface to draw cars in, I think is the end goal, in my opinion. So, and if you have the green space, if you have the lot size and the green space, then we wouldn't require you to pave all that green space just to have spaces that you're not going to use. But if you have a lesser amount and have that ability, if you do grow,
There's some advantages to all that. And a good example is the vacant lot beside Huntington Bank that it was just removed from the flood zone. I think the potential there, the person that was probably going to build on that is counting on using some of the shopping center parking, which is good because it's not being utilized now. So why make her create, or the business create more parking when you've got parking that isn't used?
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so to that end, I would suggest we have currently 1175.10 E in our current code that I would suggest adding in here, which says the planning and zoning commission shall determine the number of parking spaces required for any use not mentioned in this section. So if it's not specifically outlined in here, then it's up to our best judgment to
And we will get something that's probably not outlined
Sure.
in here.
typically. But that's, in reading through it, I wanted to put those points out there because that's where I'm coming from,
That
is
makes sense.
less amount of paved space, maximize green space. But don't do any more than what you absolutely have to, because at the end of the day, we're trying to be more.
Compact is good too.
Right. Yeah. So,
I have to think about the, I don't know if any of you went to the Summer Fest. I want to, my estimate is there was 1,500 people there. And everybody found a parking space, even though the Slants was closed. And the Horseshoe was not technically open, but it was full.
Yeah, there's plenty of people.
And the Ghost Rider was full. So, but everybody was there. They
people
made it.
over at the old middle school site walking down Oregon or
People were coming from everywhere.
everywhere?
I mean, a lot of them parked behind Ghost Rider and stuff like
Park,
that.
Park National Bank, all
When we
the
shut
sites.
down, a lot of them
Or the
went to.
church.
Presbyterian Church, of course, filled up. They even parked in the aisles. So
That's how-
I think it was good for business downtown too, because we shut down and then a lot of people went to the pub. A lot of people went to like Ghost Rider.
Yeah, they went
I
to the
down and
bar.
Got a pizza.
Yep.
So,
Horseshoes open upstairs.
yeah, Horseshoe, yeah, the new old Horseshoe was open upstairs.
Yep.
Yeah, they have a
So-
very small sign that says.
Well, yeah, they want you to just come in slow. They got a train. I mean, yeah, they want it to be top notch. So
It's
got a
chalk written, not
train.
spray painted.
So within the table here, I had a couple questions. Items 3, 4, 5, and 6 have to do with facilities with drive-throughs and without drive-throughs. The only difference I can see is that personal service, you don't have a maximum. With eating and drinking establishments, you do. Is that by design? Do we want to combine them? Do we need to break them out? Is my question.
I didn't put a maximum on personal services just because personal services, I didn't think that people would be staying as long and that they wouldn't have as many people in at a time. So just by nature, they wouldn't want to have as many as an eating establishment, whereas eating establishments, people down. and
Maximum number of
stay.
spaces.
So I figured that might be something that we'd want to have a maximum on.
That's fair.
Yeah, so personal service.
So you just want me to
Yeah.
flip them up?
It just didn't match. Just because the other one did, and I was like, somebody's gonna. What does that mean? What? I'm gonna comment. That's the piece.
Is that the same logic with several of these where there aren't maximums, is just the thought that you wouldn't be there for an extended period of time. So as a business, you would,
Clearing out the bank.
Yeah, bank, you want to be in and out. Yeah.
Might be there for a while.
Number 9's awesome though. Self-serve laundries. You get one for every 3 washers. I like. I don't know how we picked it, but. Like.
I feel like a lot of these were
Poor
based
guys-
off of
Poor guy's only busy a third of the time though. He's probably.
Granville and New Albany and Dublin, I think.
What's that, Ben?
A lot of these parking requirements are based off of like Granville and New
They are.
Albany and Dublin, from what I recall.
I couldn't imagine that Granville's and Elmer's.
I always like to think back to Grandview. There's no parking in Grandview, but the businesses thrive.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
We're finding a way.
You have one large parking area.
when they did the Lane Avenue Shopping Center and they put that big grocery store down in there, I mean, their theory was that Upper Arlington Council and Zoning Department said, you know what, if the parking lot's full, it looks like everybody's business, so we're not gonna worry about it.
Full parking lots are a good thing.
Yes, I read that story too. They're talking about Trader Joe's, I think is what it was. They're talking about.
Yeah, Trader Joe's, that's their philosophy.
Yep. Items 10 and 11. So I understand they're talking about human versus pet clinics. but the requirements are literally the same. So I think we can probably just combine those to save space. Otherwise, comparing each of these to what we currently have on the books, the fact that we've really maxed out based off of what, our current code is, and that the emphasis will be on less paving, fits with the way that I'm looking at what our future state should be with this stuff. So
That's what we want.
everything else feels fine with me.
No trees and all that.
Jim, did you have any public comment or you just? I'm not trying to, sorry, Ryan,
No, you're fine. You're fine.
sorry.
I was gonna ask about signs, but Jim, if you have something. No, signs is next. Okay. Yeah, if you have points you wanna make, we'll take them.
That was a long meeting. Last week.
Jim Hill, 49 Concord Court.
Say, it's not long yet.
The dealing with the landscaping and the maintenance thereof. And this, and I'm sorry, my copy is from the previous, my index is up to date, so I think my indexes are.
I'm on the same page with you. I have the old book too, though.
Just print it out.
It's what I have is 33.05 C. It's landscape screening, maintenance and shrubbery of hedges. It speaks to the owner taking care of that. That and I'll do it all at once. 3306. 3307 landscape materials. G, maintenance and installation. The owner of the property shall be responsible for the continued proper maintenance of all landscaping. What I thought on both of those sections, dealing with the adjacent property owner having the authority without question that if a limb is over close to a shed, a house, other trees, other bushes, they have a right to chop it off at the property line or close to it, without the owner of the tree giving the okay. Obviously, you all know the circumstance pertaining to our neighbors. And listening to the discussion, I think the comment was, well, it's okay, don't worry about it. And that's true. But then the conversation said, however, we talked about solar panels, how big they are. Well, what's the next thing? We don't know what the next thing is, probably. We have to look at that. Never in my dreams did my wife and I think that we were going to be living next to what we're living next to. Because the latest, and it's already been reported, they have a tripwire with a metal stake next to the sidewalk going up and down the property line. Trip wire, not a cord, not rope, wire. But anyway, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know individuals and how they think. So, but I wanted to point that out. The other thing,
Can I just ask a question on that, Jim?
Sure.
Just before we move off that topic. So your call out is making sure that whomever's property,
adjacent,
if it's on your property, you can,
I have the right to go ahead and chop a limb that's coming over that may be over my house, or maybe over my shed, or maybe be over my my own bushes, trees, and is impeding the growth thereof.
Yes, and I might even think that that is already established case law,
Yeah,
that
you
you
can-
have that ability.
is.
You
I-
can definitely cut anything that comes over.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I gotcha.
yeah.
But boy, if I had it in writing,
It's in writing, isn't
It
it?
is. It's a tried and true rule that if you have your properties being interfered and could be a safety issue for either your property or the occupants of the property, you have the right to cut the limb off.
it's almost like,
I know that's one of those like timeless rules, but we have that in here somewhere.
I don't know if we,
have it
I
in, but
don't-
It's gotta be. If it's
I-
not in there, it needs.
I've had it approved by
It's-
village
it's like
council.
one of the oldest rules of home ownership. Your neighbor's tree
Uh,
grows over.
But
it, you
Ryan,
cut it off.
But Ryan, what you're doing is you're taking away what's there now and replacing it.
Yep.
And so what I'm saying is,
This is the section it should be in.
should it be
Explicitly
added
stated.
to that? There's no doubt, there's no question. Not going to go to planning, not going to go to the village manager or city manager or to zoning, say, can we do it? It's there. Yes, you can do it. Chop it off.
explicitly
you're done.
stated is what you're saying.
Yeah,
I
So
don't.
then-
just making it easier to define it, say, here it is. If you have an issue with it, here it is.
So just for that purpose, I don't have a problem explicitly stating it as long as we are correct in our assumptions that it is established case law. So to that end, if we can make it, my suggestion, we make a note, but check with our legal side to ensure that.
Case law, or can you put it in the ordinance to say? that-
We want to put it in the code, but we want to run it by our city attorney first to make sure that we are correct in
We all-
assuming it's case
We all
law.
feel like we've heard it. We all feel like it's sound
Right.
and that it's established.
Sounds
However,
good. And I've heard it too.
even though this will go past him, if we're memorializing this in writing, definitely want to make sure that we've crossed our Ts and dotted our Is. But if it's established, I don't have any reason explicitly putting it in there for sure. I think
So what
that's,
would our language be? Do you want us to propose something for you, Bailey, or you can write that up? Okay. Thanks.
Yaz can probably, take it from what we currently have or what's even been established. If there's a verbiage that you could apply in that specific situation to support it.
The other thing dealing with that, if we can pass on, proceed, got it, okay. I believe it was Sunbury, either Sunbury or Delaware I was looking at. And I think it was Delaware that any addition to businesses and everything comes to planning. Any changes, any additions, things of that nature. And I think Delaware also has a very good sign portion of their ordinance. And I believe it was, I don't have it with me, unfortunately. I guess it doesn't matter. The PUD, I've had some conversations. PUD doesn't have a lot of muscle in it, and it doesn't have a lot. And sometimes when you look at these plats or site, whatever it was,
Site plan.
site plans that, whatever the controversy is. And I smile at only because I've been up there, as you guys know, and I've done that and got the hammer a few times. That they look like, my goodness, this is awfully dense. Is this what it's going to be? Is this what it's going to look like? You look at it and say, ew, that's not what we want. Well, if there's something in the PUD section that says that there's a minimum setback, side setbacks, it spaces out those dwellings. And so therefore, you already have on record. No, everything has to be 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet, whatever you want to make it. And if they don't, then you have to come and ask for a variance and ask for a change for that particular lot. Because there are some lots in some of the PUD, and most are, they're a little odd, little funny backyards, large side yards, and et cetera. So I just want to throw that out. I came across it, and I'm going to continue to try to stay up with you folks. It's hard. Only from my schedule and what I have to do. But I still want to throw it out. I don't like not being on the same page. But yet, on the other hand, if I have something, I like to at least let you know about it. Anyway, so, but I would think about the PUD. If when you either get to it, or if you have gotten to it, or going to review it again, there is
PUD's pretty open.
pretty loose.
I mean, we want it
Pretty
vague
loose.
for a reason.
Yes, but
Yeah.
do you want the density?
No.
There's the
that's-
problem, there was a problem
That's
right
where the-
across the street.
That's where the discussion comes in.
And that's where there's a way of handling that up front before they put something out. And can you change it? Well, you can if you see fit.
The mechanism that we landed on to address density from a PUD is required open space.
And I
And
think,
if you have, I think, if you have a percentage of open space that's required, and then a subset of that that needs to be usable and isn't counted towards dense trees or a tree stand or
Sure.
a wetland that, is fun to look at. If you set your green space requirement at a certain level, it typically promotes a conservation type design, which limits the infrastructure and everything like that, and really drills down to the type of density or homes that you can put on a particular parcel.
And
So
I asked you, Ben, is that in
Yes,
the PUD?
yes,
And I think that's
yeah,
very good.
yes,
And if you need to expand it, here's another way
yes,
of expanding that to force
yes.
the developers to look at that before they put it down on paper, and then it gets really,
And that's not
Yes.
in our current code, but it is in our updated code, with the understanding that the emphasis on the green space requirement is really due in large part to just our identity and wanting to preserve our identity and of the rural characteristics therein, and knowing that PUDs are largely going to be annexations that come in from a township in some way, shape, or form in large parcel, and that we want to do what we can to preserve that green space, and then leave the development piece of it a little bit open to the developer to be creative about what they bring forth at that point. Is it mixed use? Is it commercial and residential, or is it mixed use residential, or something to that?
so what I'm hearing from you is the corporation limits aren't going to expand.
I'm sorry?
What I'm hearing is the corporation limits aren't going to expand. You're talking about annexation. I'm talking about corporation limits going out, especially out 62.
Well, the only reason that'll happen is annexation.
But you do have the new industrial park out there. You're pushing water out that way.
Right.
And it will be, but council can do that. They can expand the corporation limits, just like what Pataskala did when they passed the,
If we incorporate, if we were to,
yeah, when they annexed, when they went out and took
when they
part of the
passed the
township.
charter, they
Yeah, they
incorporated
went
the
out and took
township.
whole Township, yeah.
It
took
became a city.
Lima Township.
Oh, that happened in Pataskala.
It
yeah.
happened in Pataskala.
Didn't the residents have to vote on that?
Yeah,
And when they passed the charter,
It just
when
kind of.
Pataskala passed the charter, because they passed it at the same time that we did.
Yeah,
And when they passed it, they also incorporated the township. and all
Lima
of a sudden
Township,
They became
yeah.
a city, and all of a sudden, a collective bargaining.
yeah, they just took the whole township.
That's why you're driving down, Mink, and you get to a certain point and it flips to 35. You're into Pataskala at that point, but you're still out in the rural, farmland. But it's Pataskala, that's Lima Township.
You down 310 and hit Township Road. That's where it was.
So anyway, that's it for right now.
Perfect.
We-
Right.
we
Love the
appreciate it.
feedback, Jim.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, those PUDs, they're nice sometimes with how they're vague, because you don't know where you're gonna be at years down the road. A little density here or there might work in certain applications, but it gives you that latitude to
Well,
figure it out as it comes.
and for me, it's as long as I've been a part of the planning and zoning conversation, PUD has been a contentious piece of it because of the openness and the flexibility of it. And I absolutely respect that. The creative piece of it, to your point, where you don't know where you're going to be down the road, who's going to bring what, why, and whether that may or may not meet your needs at that point. But what I continue to come back to is that what we have in the books is that any kind of development, even though it were to come, if it were to come forth and be submitted, reviewed, everything like that, it comes to planning and zoning, and then it still goes through council. And that's a recent change. So it's not as if planning and zoning is the end all be all. It's a recommendation that comes from planning and zoning that then goes to council for final approval at that point. So a little bit different from the last time that we entertained an annexation or a large development like this.
We don't make
Uh,
any final decisions anymore.
But it's different because it gives village council the end say. So, but valid call out nevertheless. I think PUDs will continue to be a large part of every planning and
I think
zoning
it'll be better
conversation.
now, though, that we have the design review. You'll have less contentious
Yeah.
debate because there's more framework that it has to fall into, whereas before it was wide open.
Well,
Now
there's,
there's more framework that debate falls within. Right.
Well,
They're
you-
gonna come in, see the design, they have to go through the design review. There's gonna be more hoops for people to jump through.
the engineering review, the landscape
Yeah.
plans, there's all that stuff ahead of time, but even outside of the green space for PUDs is we haven't even got to it yet. And I don't believe that there's anything in our current code to support it, are almost like additional development agreement type provisions where you have in-kind contributions and stuff, land donations, if you have an annexation of a parcel or a group of parcels that exceeds a certain acreage, then what we will entertain as we get to the end of the zoning code is language to designate a certain percentage of that toward a new school or toward a park. That is an automatic lever that gets hit once you reach that benchmark because it's in the code at that point. So that's on council's table, right? It's on finance. I don't know if you saw, but finance moved forward to have a study done for impact fees, very similarly to what Pataskala did, to see how we might incorporate those go forward. And it's in, impact fees is in that same section here, so we might even take care of it before we finish going through the updated code.
Yeah, it needs to head up. We already got tap fees up, so.
But impact fees absolutely are on the table.
All right, where are we delving into signs tonight, guys, or have you had enough?
Nope.
All right.
Are you done with your carports? You weren't here last time.
Done with the carport.
We're gonna hold off on that. Other business. What else do we have going on? Anything else coming, going?
We heard it. all.
Nothing official. I mean,
Anything
there's always
unofficial?
people.
Anything unofficial?
We heard it all.
On a
I think
serious note,
I think I mentioned to you
unofficial?
that on Commerce Drive, that the Andy Joseph building, which is now called, what's it called, Teresa, do you remember?
What, the
Any-
old one or the new one?
The new one, his building.
His building?
Well, I mean, that company that's in there that grows,
Curly,
Grows marijuana.
Curly,
yeah,
his old building.
yeah, right, his old
Surely.
building. I have prints in my office that he wants to increase it by 45,000 square feet. So that's still out there.
Okay.
At the back,
Yeah. But if you remember, Ben, when he built the original 16,000, he said he might expand it 5 times. Well, that would take care of it.
there's still room on the current parcel up to, he wouldn't have to acquire new land.
No,
Yeah.
he's got enough.
That's what I figured.
Of course, Tech Rubber's moving forward, but nothing if, they don't have any permits for them yet either.
All right. Well, any other public comment? Nope. All right, we will move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
It's-